And what got us to this place was we took it slowly, but the most important thing I think we did in the beginning was we dealt with the emotional side of divorce. Because at the end of the day, divorce is a business transaction. And that might sound apathetic, and it's meant to be apathetic, because in order to get to a happy divorce, you got to take the emotion out of the business side of the transaction, because so many times decisions are made off of emotions when it comes to divorce. So Nikki and I were able to deal with that emotional side first as best we could. And then we could move into the business side of the assets and the bank accounts and whatever. And because we dealt with the emotional side first, it made it that much easier to deal with the business side of it.
I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married with children.
It's been 12 years since we got this gang together.
And we're still running the rapids of living with a blended family.
And sometimes that is just not easy.
If you're looking for support and tools when it comes to divorce, step-parenting, co-parenting, and giving it your best,
you're in the right place.
We're talking about everything.
You ready to get this party started?
Always.
Oh my gosh, today is definitely one of my super favorite episodes. What a blast it was to interview this couple who is happily divorced. And their names are Nikki DeBartolo and Benjamin Heldfond, and they are the authors of Our Happy Divorce: How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Together. And if you are looking to get inspired, if you're feeling like totally helpless about your relationship with your ex and co-parenting and thinking there's no way ever that we're ever going to get along or be able to work together in a mature and reasonable way, then this, I'm really hoping, is going to change everything for you. It's definitely opened up my mind. We talk a lot about on this show how to disengage when it comes to drama. And we still stand by that. We talk a little bit about that in today's episode as well. When there is high conflict, there are things to not feed into the conflict. And there's ways that you can control yourself and your emotions and your perspective, even when you can't control the situation, which you usually can't, right? You can really only control yourself. And what's so inspiring about today's episode is listening to two people who went through a lot, but were still mature enough to come together and do what was the best for their son. And it's just so inspiring. And if I could pick an episode for all of our listeners to hear, it would be this one, whether you are just entering into divorce, if you're separated, if you're considering divorce, or if you've been years into it and you just consistently ride that roller coaster of drama and conflict with your ex. And the thing about this is that it really does take two. It can't just be one person. So really listen to this with an open heart and an open mind. And I hope that you'll also think of your children first and foremost as you listen to this interview. Again, the book is called About Their Book, and then we're going to dive right into this amazing interview. Our Happy Divorce. And in this book, Ben and Nikki came together. They wrote this book together. First of all, that's just amazing in itself. Not only do they co-parent well and do the whole blended family thing so awesomely well, they wrote a book together, and they elaborate on the difficulties of their divorce experience, what their individual pains and triumphs were, and also their unique approach to relationships and blended families. They basically refuse to participate in the standard litigious legal divorce process that so many of us know, and it's so painful. And what they did instead was devised a new strategy and worked to confront their hurt feelings and fragile egos head on. And they were so committed to putting their son's need first in every decision that they actually helped each other heal and build a future. And again, I'm not saying this was all easy. They don't say it was all easy. And we're going to talk about that. They're being so vulnerable and transparent in what they've gone through. And I'm so grateful to it. Their blended family today is such a testament to their commitment to just a few core principles and their incredible son during their divorce and beyond. And you're going to hear all of that. I'm so excited. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let them do the talking. Let's go. Ben and Nikki, welcome to the show. First time ever happily divorced couple.
Hi, thank you for having us.
So already, I know our listeners are going, wait, what? Like the book title says it all, Our Happy Divorce. That doesn't happen. So the interest is already there. Everyone's like totally piqued and engaged. How the heck did this happen? And we're going to talk about all of that. But first, can we have a little bit of a background on who you two are and how this book became possible?
Ben, do you want to start?
I guess I will start because I'm the guilty party of how this book sort of, how it came to fruition. And Nikki and I were divorced 14 years ago, and we took a different path than most people do. And I think just as quick as possible, we just dealt with the emotional part of a divorce first and sort of cleaned up some of the wreckage of the past. And then we went into the business side of a divorce. And, mainly what that was to put, so we didn't hand our son the emotional bill of our choices, of our decisions. And
you need to make it known that you didn't start off that way.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think I started off as what I knew about divorce, and that was, war and, making Nikki pay, and it was all her fault. And then, like I said, we eventually dealt with the emotional side of it. But the book, 14 years ago, I think the goal, if you had asked us, was that we just wanted to be able to be in the same room together. We wanted to sort of, co-parent our son. And most importantly is to not hand him that emotional bill. For our decisions. And I grew up in a household that was not a happy divorce. And it's one of those things where kids sort of have to become the adults. And my brothers and sisters had to be very conscious about, for graduations or weddings or where mom and dad sat. So we didn't want that for our son. And then it sort of evolved and to something that we would have way overshot or undershot our goals. And we started, actually becoming friends and blending our families. And then social media came out and we started posting our lives and people were like, what is going on? Like, what's really happening with the Heldfond, with Ben and Nikki? And someone said once we should write a book, and we sort of laughed it off. But then I realized that, the story's pretty good and it could give people hope. That at least the goal was to give people hope that it could be different. It doesn't have to be this toxicity that, like a dark cloud that follows you for the rest of your life. But there was only one way I was going to do it. And that was if Nikki agreed to do the book with me, because I actually
had no choice or he would never speak to me again.
Right. It was, you thought the divorce negotiations were hard. The negotiations to get Nikki to co-write this book with me were made those look simple. But, the reason we have a happy divorce isn't because of one person, just like the ending of our marriage took two of us to ruin it. This happy divorce took two of us to make it. So it was important to me that Nikki write the book or we weren't going to do it.
And I think the important thing for us too was that we just had to keep our son front and center. Like it wasn't about us. So we had to take all of our garbage and keep it aside, because in the long run, the only thing that's important is making sure he is happy and he is safe. Right. And his well-being is the most important part of the whole thing.
Well, I think that I would hope that the majority of parents going through a divorce would say, of course, I want what's best for my child. Of course, I don't want them to have to go through all of the emotions that we're going through. And yet, way more often, right. I mean, it's mostly what we hear is the exact opposite is happening. Like, why do you think that? Why is it so incredibly hard to be that adult that they need, and the ego just takes over? I mean,
that's exactly the word. It is ego, and the ego is cunning, baffling, and powerful. I can speak from a man's perspective. It is even more cunning, baffling, and even more powerful when that gets hurt. And then it starts playing tricks on you about your decision making. When you look at it through the lens of ego or hurt ego, it's amazing how you can trick yourself into believing that you are actually doing something in the best interest of your child, when really it's in the best interest of yourself. So I think
right. I honestly think people get blinded by their own stupidity and think that, and by their own ego, because I think that people have totally have no idea how smart their children are. So they don't even realize that the things that they're doing are how much they're affecting their kids.
Exactly. I mean, I've definitely heard parents say, well, I'm just trying to protect them from that bad parent. They should know that he's bad or she's bad. And it's like,
right. And
you get to decide that.
And what Nikki said, about how it started is, for me, that's how it started. Is I was out to, just let the world know.
Make me the really bad parent.
Right. That it was her fault that the marriage ended. I wanted to make sure that not only Asher knew in some capacity, but the world knew. And it was out of vengeance, resentment. But really what it was about was, a damaged, hurt man who didn't really have the tools to deal with emotional onslaught of negative emotions.
So that's so huge right now that you're just completely taking responsibility for that, which is just like the most beautiful thing and an incredible example for your son. But the question is, how long did it take you to get to that point? What was that moment that you were just like, okay, this isn't all her fault?
Right. So for me, I left the house in a
very dramatic, like dynasty / Dallas sort of way.
This is the worst, but they probably call it like a Beverly Hills housewife moment. That
oh my God, it really was.
But Nikki, of course, we brought it up in the book, and I talk about it. So I
just make fun of him all the time about it.
So the decision was made, and of course I had to make a grand exit. So I took a picture of us, I think from our wedding, and I ripped it in half, and I took off the wedding ring and I put it in the middle of the picture. And I left the house, and the first thing I did was I called my lawyer friends about who was the meanest, toughest shark lawyer in town, and I found him, and I sat him down, or he sat me down, and he told me everything that I wanted to hear, and how this case was big enough to drive an 18-wheeler through, and he took a very big retainer from me, and then a couple days later I got this War and Peace game plan. Destruction of Nikki.
Did I make a joke about that? He just simply changes the person's first name and last name in the whole thing, and he gives the same to everybody.
The game plan doesn't change, just the names do. But I carry this backpack around. I always have. I don't know why I still do it. 47, 8 years old. But I kept it in my backpack, and I didn't read it right away. And I maybe a week or so I had it in there. And I was on a red eye back from LA, and I pulled it out. And I started reading it, and I don't know what it was. Like, I don't know if it was because it was 3 a.m, 4 a.m, but a moment of clarity, really, for the first time in a long time. I read a first couple pages of that, that game plan. And for the first time, I could no longer continue to buy my own BS. And it was the first time that I actually got honest with myself about the nature of relationships, first of all. That, it takes two to make it. It takes two to ruin it. There's no way that it could just all be Nikki's fault. But also, and most importantly, at that moment, I realized that I was going down the same path that my parents, went through with their divorce. And I knew where that path ended.
Oh, wow.
And so why would I, consciously, but the other thing, and in defense of my parents, and in defense to a lot of people out there who don't deal with the emotional side of it, they don't sit around after they make the decision. My parents didn't sit around and decide to get divorced. And then the next decision was, how are we going to screw up our kids' lives?
Right.
It wasn't premeditated. Like when I left Nikki's house and I went to the lawyer, I was just so tunnel visioned that I couldn't even see what I was about to do to my son or Nikki or me or the rest of our lives. It was just, I was so run by those negative emotions. But at that moment, I was like, wait, I know where this ends, and I have to find a different path. I have to find a different way. So one, and first and foremost, Asher escapes this without Nikki and I feeding him poison, hoping the other one dies. But I just had to find a different way. Now, what that was, I had no idea. But that's when the moment it came for me that I had to do something differently.
Nikki, what was it like for you, especially at the beginning?
I think for me, I guess I was sort of petrified in the beginning about the whole entire, thing. I mean, everybody, I think I was the first person to ever separate from my husband in like my whole entire family. Oh, so wow. I think that part of it was really scary for me. And like the fact of like going to my parents and having to tell them that. But I think on the other hand, my parents have been married for almost 52 years now. So my thing in the beginning was, okay, what can I do to fix this? Because I'm a total fixer. So I wanted to fix it, whether it was, figuring out some way for us to stay together or figure out, and I think we quickly figured out that was absolutely never going to happen. So I knew kind of where his mindset was and how he was. As hard as it was for me, I just sort of took a few steps back and I just said, let me just try to wait this thing out and see if something changes with him, because I knew in my head that divorce was never something that I ever dreamed of going through. So I was like, what can I do to make this, not any worse than it's seemingly going to be? So I just sort of, I took a few steps back and I just kind of waited it out and kind of hoped that he would turn a corner.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, Nikki is a fixer. She always has been, probably always will be. So that was one of the things that we did for a while with the relationships that I don't think, we're terminally unique in that sense is, let's try it one more time. Let's do it. Divorce, at least in our case, and from what we've heard, through this journey, is it's not just a fight at a dinner one night, right? It's a process. And, we would always, give it one last chance and try to fit that square peg in the round hole. But, we just got, at least, I think both of us just got madder and madder that wouldn't fit. That square peg didn't fit. And so Nikki was much more amicable as far as
much more
and as far as her interactions with me, and I was the one who women always get the bad rap for having the scorched earth or the hell has no fury, right? But I was actually the one who was the scorched earth mentality in the situation. But after the plain aha moment, if you will, is the first call I made on Monday was to the lawyer, telling him thank you, but no thank you. And then the next call was to Nikki. And it was a call that just asked for some time. And it wasn't time to, figure out how we're going to make this marriage work. It was time for me to, sort of figure out some stuff on my own. And I told her that I was in no position, to make any major life decisions, much less a decision about, our son's future and in turn, our future and our future happiness.
Have you ever wanted to send an anonymous message or letter to someone? For me, the most powerful therapy has always been to write. If I feel angry, sad, super inspired, or just wanting to feel understood, I write, and often I write letters to someone when those feelings involve a particular person. When it comes to divorce, co-parenting, step-parenting, new relationships, and everything that comes along with blended families, there tends to be a lot we don't say and a lot we wish we could say. And it feels so good writing a letter as if you are going to send it to that person. It's like this huge pressure off of your chest. It's kind of cathartic. Well, we want to offer you that forum where you can have a voice. Anonymously, of course. If there's something you've always wanted to say to someone, but knew that out of respect or to save drama or because you knew it wouldn't be received well, now is your chance to get it out there and have it be read, because we would like to serve as your voice. So here's what to do. Head over to everythingalways.co/forum. That's FORUM, everythingalways.co/forum, and fill out the form. We won't know who you are, as it will be sent to us totally anonymously. It just hits our inbox, but we have no idea who it's coming from. as they come in, we will be sharing these on the podcast. We'll be able to reply to you. You'll still remain anonymous unless you reply back. And we'll let you know if it will be featured. It's 100% confidential. So what do you say? Ready to get it off your chest? Okay, back to the episode. How old was Asher when you got divorced?
About 3.5.
Yeah.
3.5. Okay. And was there any of this, the anger and the emotions, the heated emotions in the beginning, did you see that affect him at that time?
Yes. And I actually think this is probably one of the first times I've ever really answered the question. He definitely went through what is the word I'm looking for, Ben? Like that.
He loss of control. He
wanted control of situations at even such a young age. Like, we would go through things where like we'd have to walk a certain way and we'd have to walk a certain direction and we'd have to, he would like lose it if we didn't do it.
Right.
It was his way of, again, not knowing how to deal. It was almost like the way I was, but I was older and had far less excuses, but a loss of control or feelings that I didn't really know how to deal with, adequately or productively. And so, he knew that his parents weren't together. And his way of doing it was by repeating things. It was scary. I mean, talk about, Nick and I,
like it was sort of like, it was kind of like an OCD thing, but but in a child. So it was like really hard to understand. And it was as a parent, it was really frustrating because no matter what you did,
he was uncontrollable.
He like unhinged.
Yeah. Because there's this like,
yeah, that lasted what do you think, Ben? Like a year, a couple of years?
A year. I mean, it was bad for about a year.
Yeah.
And then we got him, talking to somebody and, did the best, that we knew how to do. But it was, look, everybody, parent goes through it, whether it's, an amicable divorce or a, there's a lot of guilt, right? At least from Nick and I mean, I don't know, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but there was a lot of guilt. And then you see this on top of it.
Right.
And, it's hard not to think about how you've already screwed your kid up so badly. But because at that point, this wasn't right away though, Nick, right? I mean, it was, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah, like maybe 6 months to a year. I don't know.
So we had started, at least we had begun the process or finished the process of at least dealing with the emotional side. And Nikki and I had made amends to her. And so we were cordial, I should say. So we were able to co-parent and communicate about him.
Yes, we could.
The best we could. We got him into, therapy, but, Nikki's point about he was 3.5 and again, we didn't give him enough credit for being aware of the situation. And even the fact, Nikki, when I thought I was being smart and staying until he went to bed, I was staying at a hotel and then coming home early before he woke up, pretending in air quotes that I was still living at the house. But he figured that out really quick, Nick, right? Right.
He totally, one morning he came into my room and like Ben was already there in the morning. So it wasn't like, he was like, where's dad? But he came in my room and he was like talking to me and he looked at my bed and he said, where did daddy sleep last night? Because he noticed that his side of the bed wasn't the way it would look like if someone slept in it. And mind you, I mean, he was probably just 4, maybe not even 4. But
wow.
Which is so scary. The fact that like people try to pretend like kids don't have a clue. They're so smart.
Yeah.
They're so smart. It's so true. And just because they aren't verbally communicating those things, because they're still learning how, it doesn't mean that they're not feeling all of that inside, which I am so glad that you guys are talking about that, because it's so important, and the actions and the things that we do, they're absorbing all of it.
They really are.
So how old is he now?
17-year-old jerk.
Did you just say 17-year-old jerk?
No, it's actually like at the end of the day. he's for Nikki and I he's been he's a very good kid. I mean, at the end of the day, he's just like any other teenager, getting the testosterone flowing. But the fact that Nikki and I have a kid that well adjusted and that good, the universe shouldn't have paid us back like that. I mean, we were the trouble kids, I guess, of our parents, right, Nick?
Right. Totally. I mean, in different ways. You were way worse than I was.
Of course. I'm way worse in every manner. Why not?
Well, it's awesome because he writes a chapter in your book, and I'm gonna tell everybody where to get that book in a little while. But no, it's amazing how what you guys have done. I want to dig into some more questions because I know people are thinking of this. So one of the toughest things going through divorce is new partners coming in, dating somebody new, getting married. How does that affect, my relationship with my son? How does it affect our co-parenting relationship? There's like so many things. Ego is definitely involved, whether you're, even if you're not hurt anymore, there's just so many things. There's just like so much. How did you guys, like, what was your experience with that? How did you get through that?
Well, I'll tell mine first because Nikki.
I was going to say you could go first because ours were they were definitely different.
Yeah, they were different journeys as far as when we got serious about somebody. But so after this sort of work I done with myself, next step was I had to make amends to Nikki, and we met at coffee, and I told her I was sorry. She then in turn apologized to me, which in itself, if you know us, is shape shifting, and I don't think we've done it since. But it was the most important time. So we built this sort of foundation on accountability and forgiveness, and that made the path forward a little easier because we were no longer like that. Didn't automatically we forgot everything that happened, but we had cleaned it up, and so going forward, we were now like I guess motivated and doing this thing for our kid, and then all of a sudden Nikki starts dating Chad, who she's married to now, who we knew when we were married. And it's like, okay, buddy, you think you're good now. You think you're the spiritual giant now of forgiveness and accountability. Your ex-wife is now dating, somebody you knew. How are you going to deal with this one? Right. And I'll never forget the first time that Chad came around as not Chad that I knew that we would run into at parties, but Chad as dating Nikki seriously. And I was coaching Asher's Little League. We were at a game and Nikki and Chad came. And the whole game I'm looking over and I'm like, okay, this is going to be the moment where I'm going to have to go over and, interact with this guy. And, after the game, the kids get all their stuff out of the dugout and the coaches sort of pick up all the stuff the kids forget to get out of the dugout. But Asher runs over to, Nikki and Chad and, gives Nikki and Chad a hug. And I'm walking over there and I feel like it's the slowest walk in the history of the world. And it literally in my head, I'm like, put on your effing big boy pants. This isn't about you. This is about Asher. And, I said, put on a smile. And I wish I could take a picture of that smile because it was probably the most awkward forced smile in the history of the world. Right. But I went over there and I gave Chad a hug. The first thing before I, gave Nikki a hug, I gave Chad a hug and I gave Nikki a hug. And it, just to sort of like smooth everything over, even though it was probably awkward, right, and not perfect, but it was just my way of letting Asher know that it's okay. It's okay that he gave Chad a hug, that he, that this is fine. This is part of the normal deal. But my insides were just being torn apart, and eventually, we always say we faked it till we made it. And eventually, I learned pretty quickly that, Chad's a great guy and he's good for Asher. And that doesn't mean that even today, my ego isn't hurt when I hear that Chad's taking Asher fishing or they're doing some, father-son thing. It's sort of, it's a little gut punch. That's the first reaction. but it's been easier as these years have gone on to realize that Asher's lucky. We're lucky. He's a second father to Asher, and I have no problem saying that. But it is, in the beginning, it was very difficult. And it for years, it was difficult. And it was years where I had to differentiate Ben's ego and what was best for Asher. And
I love it. It's such something that's standing out to me in that whole story is that those feelings don't necessarily go away. And it's not like, you've totally evolved and there's no ego anymore. It's those things are there. It's really a matter of how you deal with it, like you did in that moment. And also just really, looking at, hey, my son gets to have another person that loves him. Yep. He gets to have this other great human in his life and this relationship, which doesn't have anything to do with you. And yours is kind of, that feeling is something for you to deal with, not for him to have to deal with.
Right. And at the end of the day, if I'm looking at this thing and looking at Chad, even from that first moment, right, of meeting him and him starting to date Nikki, if I look at that from, the non-ego lenses, and try to justify why he's not best for my son, I have absolutely nothing to stand on. I have no basis whatsoever. He checks all the boxes. He's a great guy. And that's all. That's what I should be asking for. I mean, that's what I should be wanting, and always have wanted. But the ego tells me different things and different stories. And then Nikki's experience was a little different, and she had made a request. And Nikki, you can tell it.
Oh yeah. So for me, it was, I knew what, I guess I'm gonna throw all men into like a little box right now. Sorry, I shouldn't do that, but I'm going to. That like a lot of men go to try to sow their oats after they get divorced a little differently than women do, I think sometimes. So I knew Ben was out, like, dating God only knows who, named Diamond and Mercedes.
Bible study. I was going to Bible study.
Yeah. So I strongly put in my request that Asher not meet anybody until Ben was really serious about them. And right. I think at first he definitely was about like, it was kind of like, screw you. Who are you to tell me who I can and can't introduce my son to?
That was my thought. That was my first, that's the ego, right? Like, who the hell are you to tell me who I can't and can't? But when I take off it was a reasonable request.
Right. And so, I mean, he accepted, and he never did it, which, totally, he was being very respectful of my feelings, which I think that helped our situation a lot. But I mean, I think the first time I actually met Nadia, well, I have two stories. My first story is that Ben and Nadia had started dating, and I knew that, Nadia was around Asher, and, Asher had talked to me, Ben had talked to me, obviously, before he introduced Nadia to Asher, but I hadn't met Nadia yet. And every night when Asher was at Ben's house, I would call him at night to say goodnight to him. And one night he's saying goodnight to me, and he says to me, "Hey, mommy, do you know Nadia?" And I said, I don't know Nadia yet, but I do know Nadia, but I don't know her yet. Like, mommy's never met Nadia yet. And he said, "Well, here, I think you should talk to her." And he puts her on the phone. And that was wow. Of saying like, "Hey, mom, here's this girl. She's in my life. She puts me to bed. She hangs out with me. I think it's time that, it's that her too." Like, I think he wanted to know that I was okay with it.
Yeah.
And he was so smart. And so, I mean, mind you, my heart dropped, and hers did too. And like, we were like, oh crap. What
both of you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Talking about wishing, I had a picture of that smile I put on when I walked over to Chad. I wish I had a picture of Nadia's face when Asher.
I do know.
Yeah.
And I think for me that, I couldn't, I really lucked out, and Asher lucked out. I couldn't ask for someone better. I mean, she and I are like best friends now. We have our own relationship outside of, this little, like, blended family, but she and I have grown to be like best friends. But, at first, and even, honestly, even now, like there was times when, if he goes up and like clunks his big body over towards her and like, hugs her, you still get a little like tinge, like a little twinge in your heart that's like, but I couldn't ask, like, I like, there's nothing as a mom, I couldn't ask for anything better. Like, I want him to love her and I want her to love him. But in the beginning, I won't lie, it was really hard. It was really hard knowing that there was another woman putting my son to bed. And, it just, that obviously hurt, but that was something I had to put aside because as long as it was good for him, it was good for me.
And then, I think the other beautiful thing about their relationship is not that they probably sit around and talk, about me, but they both have the relatedness of being married to me. But also they're, Nadia and I have 2 kids, and, I think that Nikki and Nadia bounce things off each other as mothers, but mothers to did not only Asher, but also Nikki almost serves as a pseudo mom to our kids too.
Yeah.
So I think that they have that bond, and I think Nikki, if I'm misspeaking, let me know, but that Nikki relies like a best friend on Nadia for her advice, not only with Asher, but vice versa with Jackson and Izzy, our 2 little ones.
100%. We're very lucky in that way.
These kids are so freaking blessed to have all of you working together. It's got to be such a secure, good feeling knowing that they have this whole, all of these parents that are there for them and support each other and like put them as a priority. It's like people listening right now are like, that's a dream. You guys have a dream. And you're being what I appreciate is you're being so transparent and open about the real feelings that go along with it. It's not like it was a piece of cake to get here. And I know that there's still times where it's not a piece of cake. I get it, But what advice do you have, especially we have a lot, I can't even tell you how many people write in and go, can you please do more on high conflict co-parenting, more high conflict co-parenting? I'm like, we talk about this stuff all the time. It is just it's what people want to hear more of because they are struggling. They are nowhere close to where you're at. What kind of advice can you give for people that are like, how do we even begin to get to this place that you're at?
Well, I think the first, thing is, and I use this analogy a lot, and it's when I struggled with addiction and alcoholism, and I got sober at a pretty young age. And I remember sitting about 26 years ago or so in my first meeting, and I remember hearing people, say that they celebrate chips or lengths of sobriety at the end of most meetings. And people would, say they had 30 days and 60 days and then 5 years. And I thought they were all full of crap because I couldn't imagine staying sober or not using drugs for 30 days, much less 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It just became so far out of my realm of possibility or reality at that moment. And so I think when you hear this story of Nikki and mine, this happy divorce and all that is, yes, it is, we're very proud of it. And, we're very happy that we got to this point, but it didn't start off this way. And we never imagined that it would become this way. We just wanted to be able to be in the same room together, and what got us to this place was we took it slowly, but the most important thing I think we did in the beginning was we dealt with the emotional side of divorce. Because at the end of the day, divorce is a business transaction. And that might sound apathetic, and it's meant to be apathetic, because in order to get to a happy divorce, you got to take the emotion out of the business side of the transaction. Because so many times decisions are made off of emotions when it comes to divorce. So Nikki and I were able to, to deal with that emotional side first as best we could. and then we could move into the business side of the assets and the bank accounts and whatever. And because we dealt with the emotional side first, it made it that much easier to deal with the business side of it. So, the other thing I'll just say about co-parenting, it's sort of a tricky word. And look, I'm not a professional by any means, but I co-parent with my wife now with our 2 kids. We are parents, and Nikki and I would probably have the same different parenting styles if we were married or whether we're divorced. My wife and I have different parenting styles, but what our happy divorce and why we're here, I think, is because for the most part, Nikki and I have communicated pretty well, and we've talked about our differences. And we do have them. We've fought about our differences, and we do have them. She's told me to go F off about our differences many times. No, not you. Not your sweet little angel. Angel. Or angel, absolutely. But so, I guess at the end of the day, it's like, no matter what happened, we were parents, and we came back to the table even after the F bombs and the bad texts and the made days without maybe talking to each other. But it was always.
I chime in here really quick though. For people who are getting divorced, don't text.
Yes.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's the worst.
It's the worst, and everything gets lost in translation. Once you're like to the point where Ben and I are, you can text all you can text all you want, because when you fight, it doesn't matter. Like you always end up breaking up, but do not text.
It is a good point. And I don't know if look, I don't know. I don't want to play the what if game, but we were lucky, I think, in a lot of sense that when Nikki and I got divorced, it was sort of before text messaging. It was sort of coming out then. I mean, I think we had sidekicks or something, but we did a lot of our, communication over the phone or in person at the Starbucks, and where we go sideways today is when those texts go back and forth, and you don't read them before you send them, or you read them with the idea that Nikki's, a brat. So everything that I'm reading it from a perspective to back up my theory that Nikki's a brat. And so, yeah, I think communication is key. But the most important thing for us, at least, was, and I don't know, however more say it, but fake it until you make it. Like, we put on our big boy pants, and one example of that was walking over to Chad, that first time, or when Nikki and Nadia first met, and before you knew it, it became natural, and before you knew it, it became respectful, and before you know it, we're living 7 houses down from each other, right. And before you know it, I'm changing my will and talking with my wife about if, God forbid, anything happens to us, Nikki and Chad, agreed to take our 2 little ones. So, wow. I think, aim big, miss small, or whatever that expression is. We didn't ever envision this, but we had singleness of purpose, and the singleness of purpose was our son. And did we do it perfectly? Up to today? No. Do we do it perfectly? Are we going to do it perfectly the rest of the time? No. But we're always committed to that singleness of purpose.
There's no such thing
until it comes time to picking colleges, and then that's a battle that I'm not going to win
that battle.
And there's no such thing as perfect. What you've done is done something that's incredibly effective and powerful with your family. That's what matters. And it's the imperfections and those things that prove how amazing and connected you guys are. And it's so freaking inspiring.
Right.
And so speaking,
can I just add one more thing really quick that I just want to say? Please. With Nikki and we talk about type A personalities. One of the other reasons we decided to write this book, or that I convinced Nikki to write this book and held her hostage, was because we truly believe that if you knew more about our personalities, if we can do this thing and we can pull it off, I am convinced anybody can. Because we are 2 type A alpha, the sheep ramming each other's heads, and somehow those 2 personalities, swallow their ego enough, and if we can do it, the recipe can work for anybody.
Well, there you go. That's the There's the testimony right there. And so I want to give you guys a chance to add anything else. But before, I know people are like, okay, where do I get this book? To find more information on you guys, you can go to ourhappydivorce.com. I know that you are Our Happy Divorce on social media. I know that you do this awesome live that Mike and I got to be on Monday.
We had a very special guest a couple weeks ago, Mike and Summer.
It was awesome. It was so much fun. You guys have, I think you have a certain offer with your book right now. Is that right?
There's you have to go through a publisher, but one of the things that this book and it was never meant to make a money or become a New York bestseller. We just want to give it to as many people as possible. And one thing we realized afterwards that we were always preaching it takes two to make it takes two to break it, and yet we're selling the single book. So if you go to mascotbooks.com, there's a 2-for-1 offer on their website, but that's the only place you get that 2-for-1.
So good. And we'll have that in our show notes as well. Links to all of that, your social media and everything. Nikki, did you want to throw in any advice there for people that are like, be where you're at?
It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And don't text.
Don't text. No, seriously, that's brilliant advice. If anything,
I'm dead serious. It ruins. Honest to God, it ruins everything because you always want to think what someone means when they text. I mean, sometimes it's even like that with your friends. Like imagine the fact that when you text your friends, sometimes you get something and you're like, why did they say that like that? But you really have no idea how they said it. But when you're talking to your ex, you just assume they always say something wrong. Like you said,
Ben, you had said you're reading it with the perspective of, so you already have this preconceived notion of where they're at and what they're trying to do to you. So it's like, no matter what you say, you could say, by the way, you're an amazing mother. Oh, you're just trying to patronize me.
Exactly.
Take it the wrong way.
And it's, I think it's the other thing is, and I think Renee Bauer actually did this with coffee for your ex. I mean, there's little things that I don't think it was done intentionally, but when Nikki and I would meet for coffee, obviously I was married to her and we dated, so I knew what kind of coffee she wanted. And so it was just like little, whether we were at a softball game or whether, I think it's just little gestures like that, to sort of just calm the mood of, and the other thing that I heard that I love, I'm sorry, I can't exactly remember who said, but when you play that boomerang of emotion game, and whether that's text going back and forth, F-bombs, whatever they are, even if you're trying to be nice, like you're just going back and forth and going nowhere, is that you can just put down the boomerang or the ball and not play catch back and sort of just stop the snowball from going down the hill. And I have to do that all the time with Nikki. I mean, I have to be the bigger person, 9 times out of 10.
Clearly, I can tell.
Clearly.
It's still all her fault. I just say all that stuff because I want to sell both.
So the biggest takeaway is that the divorce was Nikki's fault.
Yep.
All my fault.
Yep.
Ben's the man.
And every problem we've had for the past 14 is Nikki's fault. Every parenting issue, it's just basically all Nikki's fault.
Ben is just perfect.
And if only she could be who I want her to be.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, you guys are so awesome. Thank you so much for doing this today. You're definitely inspiring so many people. And I really hope that listeners, that you're really looking at this and like you said, Ben, if we can do it, you can do it. Like really think about that and think about where you're at and know that it doesn't have to stay there. There's always, you can definitely achieve what Ben and Nikki have achieved, but it does take two. And it, of course, it first begins with you listening and saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Right. If you find yourself listening and you're listening to this or you're listening to any other stories of an amicable divorce and you find yourself saying, yeah, but, I think that's a blockage. Yeah, but my ex does this, or yeah, but they didn't have to deal with this. We had to deal with it all. We don't talk, we don't talk anything about what happened in our marriage. Look, we didn't get a divorce because our marriage was great, but the point is all that stuff doesn't matter. We left that stuff in the past. And if we continued to dwell on it and say, yeah, but Nikki's this, or Nikki did this, or Nikki didn't do this, or Ben did this, then we would never have been able to move forward.
Never.
And so, the yeah, buts are just blockage to you moving forward in your life.
Yeah, that's so true.
It is true.
Did you say it was true, Nikki?
No.
Was that on tape? So,
not.
Summer, you're still recording, right?
We'll edit that part.
No, I want a copy of that.
No.
A copy of that.
Thank you guys so much. And again, everybody check them out, ourhappydivorce.com, and everything is in the show notes, all the links. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And sorry Mike couldn't join us, but we really appreciate it. We love the live stream. It's still up on our Happy Divorce Facebook. You can go look at Summer and dropping some knowledge.
Sweet. Yeah, that was fun.
Thank you so much for listening. And we like to say, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't. See you next time.